The Home Secretary will call on Western leaders this week to come together to help combat the global migrant crisis.
Yes, Suella Braverman is to tell an audience in Washington that countries can learn from the innovative steps that the UK has tried to take in dealing with illegal migration.
Well, that's not what it said there. It said that the UK has taken.
Yeah, but they haven't been successful with the Bibi Stockholm or with the Rwanda flights yet. Yes, they may be innovative ideas, but unfortunately they aren't yet active policy.
Yeah.
Lots of
so I find it strange that we can go to America and say, this is how you should handle your migrant crisis, because are we doing it? Well, as she addresses her global audience, GB News has travelled to the front line of this crisis in Europe. Now, this morning, we are live to Mark White. Mark is in an Italian island, Lampedusa. Mark, the significance of Lampedusa, it all looks very beautiful, but the imbalance between migrants and people living there is absolutely incredible. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, this island has been in recent weeks overwhelmed by the number of migrants arriving from North Africa to this, one of the most southerly points in Europe. As we arrived into Lampedusa last night, we filmed as dozens of Italian police officers arrived at the airport there to help reinforce the officers who are already here. Of course, this island itself is a permanent population of about 6,000, so there would only be at any given time around about half a dozen police officers normally, but there are hundreds of police officers here to deal with what is a growing crisis. And our reporter, Thomas Sullivan, has been looking at the background to this crisis.
Italy's most southern island, Lampedusa, has for the last 2 decades taken in thousands of asylum seekers who have overwhelmed the small island's processing facilities, often leading to riots as conditions become intolerable and overcrowded. The island is actually closer to Africa than it is to the rest of Italy, and has long been a key transit point for migrants and refugees seeking to enter Europe. So why has this old problem been growing worse, and what are people fleeing from? After Colonel Gaddafi's removal following Western intervention in 2011, Libya descended into a brutal civil war that left the country vulnerable to terrorist gangs, and left Europe's maritime borders more vulnerable to illegal crossings. Next month will be the 10-year anniversary of the tragic sinking of a migrant boat off Lampedusa, which saw 360 people lose their lives. But weak state control on the North African coast is only one part of the problem. Another part is the deteriorating humanitarian situation in West Africa. Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, who was elected on an anti-migration ticket, has repeatedly claimed that the solution to Europe's migration crisis lies in improving the quality of life for those who are so desperate to flee.
The gold that this child goes down a tunnel to extract mostly ends up in the coffers of the French state. So the solution is not to take the Africans and bring them to Europe. The solution is to free Africa from certain Europeans who exploit it and allow these people to live of what they have.
Anger with France in the Sahel region is real, as a string of anti-Western coups in the past year has shown. And this destabilization has been exploited by Russia and its Wagner proxies. There has long been concern that Wagner is being used by Russia to support coups in return for favourable export deals when it comes to Africa's minerals and resources. And Russia, via their ally Belarus, has demonstrated that they're not adverse to using desperate people as a weapon of war. So as Europe grapples with a seemingly unending and unsolvable migrant crisis, should its politicians be listening to the likes of Meloni and others on the front line who say that the problem must also be solved at source?
Well, the people of Lampedusa have enjoyed somewhat of respite in recent days as the Mistral winds have been blowing, and they've been making it a bit impassable out in the Mediterranean for these boats to make what is a 200-plus mile voyage here to Lampedusa. Now, last night we went down to an area of the harbour normally closed off, but we were able in the darkness to get right down to see some of the dozens of boats that are stored in this area of the harbour. We noticed, as they do here, just as the Border Force do with the boats that arrive from Dover, they paint on numbers for these boats. There was one boat, 975, so that particular boat, almost 1,000 have arrived this year so far, but that was just that boat. There may actually be many more than that. As I say, the Mistral winds have given some respite, but the islanders know that the second that the winds start to die down, the migrant boats will be back in numbers.
Mark, we'll be talking to you throughout the morning as to what happens when people arrive there, and just a general update on the whole situation and how it affects all of us. Who lands in Lampedusa, their problem today, our problem tomorrow. So for the moment, my friend, thank you very much
Mark.
indeed.